Try as they might, collaborations in hip-hop can snowball into a precarious situation, required to appease rivaling egos, artistic visions, and financial interests. It's something that's proven easy enough to accomplish on a one-off basis, but much harder to sustain. Sometimes, the gamble of coexisting with someone with a different outlook and skill set pays off and yields magic that enriches both careers. In late blooming partnerships such as Killer Mike and LP, Prime, Method Man and Redman, or even Freddie Gibbs and Madlib, we see how artists can intertwine themselves in prosperous ways. But in the case of the hotly anticipated Child Rebel Soldier, their legacy has been defined by what didn't happen rather than what did. Comprised of Lupe Fiasco, the Child, Kanye West, the Rebel, and Pharrell, the Soldier, the group had the resources and talent to create something truly industry-altering. But instead, they imploded before they could ever soar to even 1% of their possible altitude. To understand how they missed this opportunity and morphed into a glaring void in each man's career, we need to take it back all the way to the beginning. In one way or another, 2006 was a major year for each member. After years of toil, the charismatic Lupe Fiasco finally dropped his Grammy-nominated Food and Liquor, which is personally one of my favorite albums of all time. 2 months prior to that, Pharrell had finally left the Neptunes and branched out on his own with The Lavish in My Mind, while Kanye West, riding off the high of College Dropout and Late Registration, was in the midst of formulating his third home run with Graduation. Yet, rather than being featured on his next official project, The Origins of Child Rebel Soldier appeared on Kanye's freely released Can't Tell Me Nothing mixtape. Bearing the moniker CRS, Us Placers featured the prolific Skateboard P, see what I did there? A laser-focused Kanye and relative newcomer and breath of fresh air as described by Jay-Z, Lupe Fiasco. Unsurprisingly, it set the world of blogs ablaze. Despite the shared acclaim of all three men, the group's inception was birthed from a happy coincidence and, even more shockingly, was actually a reimagined version of the roster that Lupe had in mind. Having set the stage for a landmark meeting of the minds, interviews saw Lupe, still in the early days of his career, open to discussing the project, and uncharacteristically for him, the hefty price tag that it would command. Pharrell came up with the idea. Let's do a group, Child Rebel Soldiers, Lupe told MTV News in April of 2008. So I did a song, took Tom York's Eraser, cut it up, put Us Placers on it, I sent the record out, and it was initially supposed to have Kanye, and I wanted the streets. I got no response. Then Kanye jumped on it and was like, I'ma send it to P. Then P sent it back, and it was like, this is the first song right here. Let's do it. That was like a year and a half ago. And the whole time we've been figuring out what to do. Now our labels are working it out, he told Billboard. Whoever is gonna pay is gonna pay a whole hell of a lot. Everybody is excited, but Us Placers is the only record we have. For a little while, that was all the insight that fans had into what CRS could possibly entail, and this was an experience that seemed to be shared by its members. But as the news that Lupe and Pharrell will be featured on the bill for Kanye's 2008 Glow in the Dark tour, Lupe threw another log on the fire, telling MTV that, we don't know if there's gonna be an album from CRS, what CRS is gonna be, he said. All we know is we're gonna debut a piece of CRS at the Kanye tour. You have to come and see it. Well, I went to see it, and personally I could tell you that there was no CRS. While this formal unveiling never materialized, a September 2008 interview with Karma Loop TV saw Lupe provide some philosophical underpinning for what the trio had set out to achieve.
It's the music, it's fashion, and it's art, you know? So it's all of our kind of zany ideas, all of the perfection or whatever that we've achieved in music, in the fashion on various levels, and our love for art, you know, and putting all that together. And so it's going to be a little bit more than just music.
A month on, NRD's Everyone Knows remix arrived complete with each member of CRS. As their flows and styles intertwined, hip-hop heads permitted themselves another dose of excitement. Up to this point, most of the dispatches about CRS came from one man, and as 2008 gave way to a new year in, this state would be retained. With Kanye deviating from his trademark sound on 808s and Heartbreak and breaking ground on the auto-tune front, And that's the sound that basically persisted in hip hop ever since. The concept of CRS was placed on the back burner in 2009. Then, from the archives, the spirit of the potentially revolutionary group was summoned. Released at the height of the 2010 Good Friday era, Don't Stop was next to emerge and only stoked the hype around the trio, consolidating their efforts for a project. Recorded 2 years prior, Lupe stated that the track was the end product of just trying to figure out what should we do, and that was one of the experiments that was bananas. After claiming in that same interview that CRS's future was predicated on demand, it wouldn't take long for one member of the group to contact Lupe about fleshing out this passion project, while, in typical fashion, Ye remained more cryptic. Pharrell hit me the other day, and he was like, "Yo, we really need to do this Child Rebel Soldiers project," the rapper said during his Shade 4-5 interview. "We did like 4 songs so far, so that's 4 songs of Lupe that your punk ass don't got. However, it's coming soon. But I'm not gonna stray anybody off of their own projects like that. I don't know what Kanye's doing, but we'll figure it out." In a break from tradition, Ye finally broke his vow of silence on CRS during a Q&A session. Unveiled during a screening of Runaway in LA, Ye said that Child Rebel Soldier was still on the docket, but only after the release of Jay and Kanye's Watch the Throne and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Left to play second fiddle to another collab, what was a cultural watershed moment for some was just another ripple in the works in Lupe's eyes. I think the Jay-Z Kanye collabo Watch the Throne kinda was like, "Aw man, nah," he said during an interview on Hartford 93.7. "Whenever we get to go in the studio and have the time and the opportunity to do it, we're always working on some other project. Pharrell gonna do a soundtrack for a movie, Kanye does another project." Sure enough, Watch the Throne arrived, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy emerged, but the CRS record, rumored to be entitled God Willing, remained absent. And by this stage, it seemed that the invested parties had begun to rationalize that it might just stay that way. During a 2011 interview with Wrap Up TV, Lupe revealed the fractured working method that hampered CRS from the jump. It's still tentatively unscheduled until me, Kanye, and Pharrell can kind of sit down and come up with a game plan and see if it's something feasible within the near future, or something that we should just think about putting the brakes on completely so we don't have people getting the runaround. Right now, we don't know. There are no real unreleased CRS records floating around out there. We only did a few when we had the opportunity to. Some were just super unfinished. Don't Stop was even unfinished. Kanye had to put a verse on it later. Formed of 3 individual parts that have been at the mercy of their creative impulses for much of their career, this scattergun approach was never going to produce a long-form project, or at the very least, not one that'd live up to the level of hype that was sparked way back when Us Placers emerged. In the wake of the years of inactivity, Lupe fired the anticlimactic final bullet into CRS's mutated brainchild in 2013 as he tweeted, "The CRS group is canceled. Done. Not happening. Stop asking." But after its demise, it appears CRS is something that the major players and onlookers still feel an affinity for. Invoked on Pharrell's 2014 contribution to Major Laser's aerosol can as he bellows, "Child Rebel Soldier hit that ass for the combo." The apparently deceased group was also inconspicuously name-checked in Pusha T's 2018 project. After Swiss Beats Cold Blooded saw him make reference to the Child Rebel Soldiers of the inner city, Daytona's show-stopping opener, If You Know You Know, allowed Pusha T to belittle his rivals, spitting, "The company I keep is not corporate enough. Child Rebel Soldier, you ain't orphan enough." With Kanye producing the latter, it's telling that he made no attempt to dissuade Pusha from using the bar. Offhand as it may seem, Pusha's insistence on citing CRS makes sense. By keeping the collective's name in the cultural vocabulary, the Good Music president makes himself all the more likely to win that alleged bidding war if the band should ever get itself back together. As for the likelihood of the 3 men producing a collaborative body of work, the forecast seems a little dreary. While Lupe has eternally sought to give Pharrell his props as the man responsible for both he and Kanye's existence, his relationship with Ye is riddled with tension and, as Lupe suggested in 2018, exacerbated by Ye's close ties to yet another old protege. Love Ye, however, the only reason I talked to him is so that I could tell him to give Cudi the phone. Unwilling to make amends, it speaks to how Lupe has always been the true outsider in the crew. Hell-bent on rallying against the creatively debilitating nature of the music business, this comes as no surprise. Experiencing a nomadic career that's taken him from the mainstream to the underground and back again, much of Lupe's career has catered to the faithful rather than striving for career advancement. While Pharrell and Kanye have been subversive forces in the mainstream, they've largely known when to broker big partnerships and ensure that they can keep their brand functioning at its full capacity. They all had the admiration for the art, the music, and the fashion that Lupe referred to. It's just that Kanye and Pharrell were able to attune their innocent dreamers mentality with corporate interest in a way that Lupe, notably identified as the child of the trio, couldn't. At the end of the day, we'll never know what conclusions were drawn from those candid, behind closed doors conversations. With all the hype that emerged from us placers, they may have been daunted by the expectations. Alternatively, the trio could have came to the stark realization that what sounded so compelling in theory was undeliverable in reality. After all, when you promise a multi-discipline fusion of hip-hop's three-dimensional thinkers, the last thing you want to do is leave people unmoved. Now, barring a U-turn from each man, Child Rebel Soldier is condemned to being one of hip-hop's most disheartening and potential loss of what could have been one of hip-hop's greatest supergroups of all time. This has been a HipHopMadness original. Make sure to stay tuned and stay up to date on everything we got going on by hitting that subscribe button and notification bell. Oh, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at HipHopMadness and join the movement. Until next time, I'm Pro the GOAT. Let's talk hip hop.